are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, your host for Locked On Seahawks. Joining me as always, my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. Glad to have you joining us for Tell the Truth Tuesday. Going to be breaking down a few things more in-depth coming out of Sunday's win over the 49ers, a few more broad topics and some micro topics looking at individual players, maybe some hot takes thrown in there. And we're going to start previewing Sunday's upcoming matchup in Houston against the Houston Texans. What's new with the 2021 Texans? Been a pretty rough season down there for first-year coach David Culley. Team's been battling, but just not a lot of talent. So we're going to pull back the curtain a little bit and check out the Texans heading into this Week 14 matchup. On Location is the official hospitality partner of the NFL, is the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. Visit On Location, exp.com/SB56 for more information or search Super Bowl On Location. Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Thanks for listening. Now for your lead story here on Locked On Seahawks. The Seahawks have the reigning Walter Payton Man of the Year award winner on their roster in quarterback Russell Wilson. And now one of his top targets is going to be trying to claim the prize for himself. Today, the NFL revealing the 32 nominees for the most prestigious award in the sport. I think that players in the league view this more favorably even than the MVP. It is considered the utmost honor to win the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. Receiver Tyler Lockett has been nominated as Seattle's nominee this year. And Rob, we know how reliable Tyler Lockett has been on the field for the Seahawks ever since they drafted him in the third round out of Kansas State back in 2015, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, had 100 receptions last year. He's on pace to set a career high for receiving yardage in 2021, but he's arguably been even better off the field, and he lives his life like his smile would suggest. He cares about everybody, and he dedicates so much time off the field to a number of causes.
No, he really does. And I wouldn't even say arguably that he's better off the field. I think that the Tyler Lockett is, truly a saint among men. I mean, he is remarkable in everything that he has done for his community in Seattle, for the Tulsa, Oklahoma community in which he grew up, for Kansas State University, of course, where he went to college, where his father and his uncle both went to college as well. He truly is remarkable in that way. And, as you mentioned, Corbin, with Russell Wilson as the reigning Walter Payton Man of the Year in the NFL, then it's difficult to say this, but I think that Tyler Lockett really could be nominated every single year that he's been in Seattle for this award, because he has just been the picture of consistency in that regard. And he gets so much credit for so much, Tyler Lockett gets a lot of credit, deservedly so, for a lot of different things that he has done in all those different communities. But, one quick little anecdote that I have is just, of course, I work in Tacoma Public Schools, and yep. I know that Tyler Lockett has spent some time at Destiny Middle School, one specific school that he went in and just worked with the students as far as the Read It program, just encouraging kids to read. And I can tell you as an English teacher myself that is one of the more difficult things to do right now, because so many kids are so fascinated by electronics. So when they can see someone who is an athletic superhero in a lot of different ways, really advocating for just taking the time to sit down and read, I think that it just kind of speaks to the heroism that is Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, I've got a personal anecdote of my own, and some of our listeners may not know this. I haven't talked a lot about my coaching background on our podcast, but when I first moved out to the Pacific Northwest, I was coaching high school football in the Seattle area at Mount Si High School, and I got the opportunity to coach at Tyler's football camp, which was at Mercer Island High School, and I've coached at a number of camps hosted by NFL players, and the work that these guys do is remarkable. But I can say without a doubt that there is not a player that has ran his own camp that was more actively invested in working with the kids that were participating than what Tyler Lockett was. And you can see it from the outset. I remember him coming out like an hour and a half before camp was supposed to start. And the first thing he did is he came down the line to shake the hands of all the coaches with a big smile on his face, thanking all of us for taking our time and volunteering to work with these youngsters. And then during drill work, he was doing the drills with them. You could see the joy on his face, just the joy on the children's face that they were getting to enjoy this moment with Tyler Lockett. And I can also remember this is really a moment that I gained a lot of respect for Tyler Lockett because, I think some people might think as soft-spoken as he is, that, might be a pushover or whatever. But there was actually a kid that was trying to talk back to me while we were working through some running back drills. And this kid was, I think, 9 or 10 years old. And I remember Tyler Lockett coming over and I don't remember word for word exactly how the exchange went, but basically said, hey, how many times have you coached running backs in high school? And the kid goes, none. And he's like, okay, be quiet and listen. And I just loved it. And of course, he jumped right into the drill after that and was doing some ladders with the kids and catching passes, throwing passes to them, showing why he's a receiver, not a quarterback. And it was so much fun. And you could just see how invested he was in the children and see all the different things he's done at middle schools and high schools, the different charities that he's been involved with, helping homeless people back in Oklahoma, providing money for Kansas State's football program, a number of other programs he's given some money to. So, like he has said, it's all about seeing the smile on other people's faces. It's not about the money that's being spent. It's not about how many hours he's dedicating. It's the joy that he sees other people get from it and the joy that he gets from being a philanthropist and dedicating his time. And so I don't know that he wins the award. We didn't know if Russell Wilson was going to win last year, but just getting nominated is a tremendous honor. And it again shows you that the Seahawks have a lot of really good players who are also outstanding human beings off the field. And I think that's something that has really helped endear them to this fan base over the years.
Oh, I 100% agree. I mean, I remember when Steve Largent won the award as well, and he was just a revered man in this community, and so to me, that is kind of the type of player that we're talking about here with Russell Wilson, with Tyler Lockett, that they are going to be legends, of course, on the field, but also off of the field. And I do think that it's worth repeating some of these numbers and some of the accomplishments that Tyler Lockett has, created for himself and more importantly for others in his community. I mean, his college scholarship program, Corbin, again, education being so key to your and my hearts, but $32,000 to 7 different students just this past year alone.
Yep.
And so that to me is remarkable. You're giving these young people opportunities to be successful. And so things like that to me really just show where his heart is and why I will be a fan of Tyler Lockett long after his days as a wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks are through.
And you can guarantee that he's going to be a lot like players like KJ Wright, who moved on this year, is now with the Las Vegas Raiders. But you can guarantee that once he hangs up his cleats, Tyler Lockett will still be involved in the Seattle community and he will be giving back. And he's going to be a player that's going to be beloved long after he is done playing. And that just speaks volumes to the type of man that he is, the type of character that he displays. And so good for him getting the opportunity to be nominated here. And even if he doesn't win, he's going to have money that he can dish out to his various charities that he runs, the foundations that he's involved with, and continue to make an impact off the field. We're going to be switching back to football here in a moment. Tell the Truth Tuesday. Rob and I are going to be dishing 3 takes apiece on this Seahawks team coming out of Sunday's win over the San Francisco 49ers. You listen to podcasts for the power of knowledge. You switch to Boost Mobile for the power of saving money, because with Boost, you get the power of a free 5G phone. So you can listen to all the latest episodes of Locked On Seahawks, the power of 3 unlimited data lines for $30 a month. Your family can harness all that brain power too, and the power of one of America's largest 5G networks, so you can do it all at the speed of 5G. With all that money you'll save and all that knowledge you'll gain, just how powerful will you become? Switch to Boost Mobile and find out for yourself. Get a free Samsung Galaxy A32 5G when you switch to one of America's largest 5G networks. More power to save. That's Boost Mobile. Super Bowl 56 is at SoFi Stadium. It's less than 100 days away and on location. the official hospitality partner of the NFL, is the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. Select your exact seats and choose from elite experiences featuring an exclusive pregame celebration with NFL legends, 5-star LA hotels, and food by the great Wolfgang Puck. Visit onlocationexp.com/SB56 for more information or search Super Bowl On Location. That's onlocationexp.com/SB56 or search Super Bowl On Location. So, Rob, it's Tell the Truth Tuesday. It's a segment we've been kind of weaning into over the last few weeks, and we've had modified schedules. And quite frankly, we both have loved it. The chance to maybe dish out a few hot takes. Maybe it doesn't have to be a hot take, but just dishing some things that we've thought out a little bit more when we've had an extra day to think about the previous game. And so without further ado, we're going to kick off the festivities here. Our first Tell the Truth Tuesday. Let's talk hot takes or facts or whatever is on your mind. What's the first thing that jumps out to you, Rob, looking back at this Week 13 matchup and where the Seahawks are heading with 5 games left to play?
Well, I think that, obviously when you're coming off of a victory, then it's easy to focus in on the positives. And I thought that one of the huge positives and one of the biggest surprises was the play of Rashad Penny. Now, we talked about this a lot yesterday, Corbin, just in terms of his pass protection. But, to me, the runs that he had, the big screen where he basically goes all the way across the field. I mean, he's outrunning San Francisco's defensive backs for that gain of 27 yards. You got to remember, this man is 230 pounds. So I know there's a lot of Seahawks fans out there who have been terribly disappointed with Rashad Penny so far. I think that Rashad Penny has been terribly disappointed with himself and the lack of contribution that he's been able to provide. But, the flashes with Rashad Penny are lightning strike flashes. I mean, they are so bright and so obvious that would be my hot take, is that Rashad Penny might just play himself back onto this roster if he is able to continue, some of the flashy play that we saw against San Francisco the rest of this season.
I'm going to look at that meeting that took place after the game on Sunday for my first Tell the Truth Tuesday statement. And I just got to say, if you're somebody that thinks Pete Carroll is going to be walking away on his own accord after this season, I think you've got another thing coming. Does this look like a coach that is ready to move on? And maybe that creates a major conundrum for the Seahawks. I'm not disputing that. If Jody Allen thinks it's time to move on, or if Russell Wilson's pushing, I want another head coach, then it is going to create a rift between the Super Bowl winning coach and the organization. There's no question about that. But after watching Pete Carroll at the end of the game yelling, "We're not dead," and talking to, throwing a bunch of F-bombs out. I didn't expect to see that from Pete Carroll, but had a number of F-bombs that were censored out in that video posted on the Seahawks social media outlets on Twitter and Facebook. And you could just see the excitement. He just wasn't acting like a 70-year-old. And it was the excitement we hadn't seen for several weeks because you could tell that he felt defeated with the way this team had been playing. And for them to finally come out and put up 30 points on the board, and probably should have scored more, and for the defense to pitch a shutout in the second half, it rejuvenated him. Now, will it carry over for several more games and keep them in the playoff race? We don't know yet. But he did not look to me like a coach that has any intentions of stepping away anytime soon. So if the Seahawks want that to happen, if they want a new head coach, I think there's going to be some drama this offseason. Certainly doesn't look to me like he's going to have any interest in stepping away voluntarily after the 2021 season.
No, I 100% agree with you. I mean, it's good to see that type of enthusiasm, that type of optimism. And I think that that's something that, understandably so, it's been lacking a little bit with how disappointed, I think that everybody has to feel about how the Seahawks have played at times this season. It just felt like so many games were right there for the taking, and Seattle was unable to finish. And that's exactly what they did against the San Francisco 49ers, who, of course, are, basically in the area in which Pete Carroll grew up. So you knew that was going to be one of those games that which he was going to take that much more seriously. So, and take it that much more personally. So again, I think that it's very understandable why Pete Carroll would be as fired up as he was there. Another thing that I thought was really impressive from this last game, Corbin, was the play of D. Eskridge. And as we talked about before with Rashad Penny and those flashes, D. Eskridge, some of the plays that he made in that game, especially the touchdown, might look simple. Because it was for a couple of yards and he just brushes off a would-be tackler and kind of falls into the end zone. But it's exactly the fact that he brushed off a tackler is what has me so excited. We talked yesterday about the fact that we have not seen that type of intensity, that type of just kind of want to from Seattle's starting punt returner and Freddie Swain, at least in that position. Now, D. Eskridge did not have any experience as a punt returner at Western Michigan. He had fairly significant experience as a kick returner, however. He has the body frame and the mentality that I'm looking for, however. And so I almost wonder if that might be a way that you can incorporate your dynamic second-round receiver into the game a little bit more. Perhaps D. Eskridge could be the answer that Seattle's looking for to give another spark to their punt return game.
He has 4 broken tackles on 9 touches on offense this year. So you got to find a way to get the ball in his hands more. Returning punts and or kickoffs would be a great way to do that. And it's different than your number 1 or number 2 receiver like Tyler Lockett being back there. D. Eskridge is a younger player that was one of the most explosive kick returners in college football a year ago. So I think it would make a lot of sense. And your statement goes right into my second one here on Tell the Truth Tuesday. More broadly, this rookie class, only 3 draft picks in 2021. And obviously Eskridge missed a bunch of games with concussion. Stone Forsythe had not played any snaps, any meaningful regular season snaps until this past weekend. Trey Brown's now done for the year with a patellar tendon injury. But I think that this 2021 class has a chance to be a very good one for the Seahawks as long as they can keep guys on the field because as you just mentioned, D. Eskridge, he just brings a different element to that slot position than they have had in a long time. You can make the argument that he's the most physical receiver they've had in the slot since Golden Tate with more athleticism. Golden Tate did not have the breakaway speed that D. Eskridge has, but Eskridge has the contact balance to be able to shrug off tackle attempts. He can make guys miss in space. So he should be a guy that you are trying to get the ball to quickly on screens. You can get him involved in the run game. Still haven't seen the deep ball threat that he can be as well. And Stone Forsythe, quite frankly, I was wowed by what I saw in limited action on Sunday. He had 5 reps against Nick Bosa one-on-one and won all 5 of those snaps. And I know that's a very small sample size, but that's a really intimidating guy to go up against in your first regular season action. And he did not back down at all. And he held his own. He beat him on a couple of power bull rushes that Bosa attempted to. Went on, ended up anchoring. There were a couple of times he tried to win upfield, and Forsythe washed him deep upfield, so he wasn't anywhere near Russell Wilson. I was really impressed. I need to see how he looks in a much larger workload, but that was as good of a first impression as you could have seen from him. And then Jake Curran played left guard, and I know he got beat a few times, gave up a few stacks, but this is a tackle that came in and really survived, and I thought played a lot better as the game progressed. Had some nice blocks in the run game. He's looked good at right tackle this year when he's had opportunities, looked great in the preseason. So you might not have drafted him, but he has a chance to be a starter for you down the road at right tackle. So you had those 3. You've got Trey Brown that looked really good before his injury. Could be a long-term starter in the secondary. Right there's 4 players that have a chance to be impact players for several years to come. And so, yes, there's been injuries. There's been disappointment, not getting guys in the field with this draft class. But unlike some of their other draft classes in recent years, it actually feels like there could be a very high hit rate, even with the lack of picks from this group. And that's an exciting development for the Seahawks.
No, it absolutely is. And we talked about that. It's not so much that Seattle really was in a tough spot because the fact that they had few draft picks. It just forces you to be that much more confident in who you are selecting. There's no draft picks that you can waste You can't be going for gambles. You have to absolutely hit on those players. And it does feel like Seattle may have hit with those players. But you mentioned that the big caveat there is obviously the players have to stay healthy. Durability has been obviously a concern for Eskridge. It is now a concern for Trey Brown, and previously had been a concern for Rashad Penny, at least during his time in Seattle as well. But if Seattle is able to get durable play from that 4-man rookie class, and of course, including Jake Curran, as you mentioned as well, then I really do think that all 4 of those players can have significant, playing time for the Seahawks, if not all of them becoming starters. And that it means it's a winning draft class. To me, the final thing that I would mention would be just how impressive Seattle's defense was down the stretch in this football game. San Francisco, if I'm counting this correctly, San Francisco had the ball 5 different times in the second half. The only time that they were able to cross even the 50-yard line was on the very last drive, which of course culminated with Carlos Dunlap being able to tip the ball to win the game. And so to me, that is one of the most impressive things. There was a couple of 3-and-outs. There was the Carlos Dunlap safety to start off the second half. And then, of course, there was the Quandre Diggs interception. So the Seattle's defense was absolutely lights out against the San Francisco offense that had been absolutely running over everybody. And especially considering how many red jerseys were out there in the stands, I thought that this was a game that Seattle's defense would have to be able to step up, and they absolutely did so.
I'm going to take it a step further. The cornerbacks have absolutely been fire the last 5 or 6 games. And I'm going to call out 2 guys in particular, the ones that are starting right now, DJ Reed and Sidney Jones. This is I guess you could call it a hot take, because we know how bad the corners were early in the season. But I think DJ Reed and Sidney Jones the last 3 weeks have been playing like a top 5 corner duo in the NFL. And the stats bear it out. Rob, here's the numbers according to Pro Football Focus over the last, I believe this dates back to week 6. Numbers for Sidney Jones and DJ Reed. Reed has been targeted 16 times, has given up 7 receptions, so 43.8 completion rate against him. He's got 4 pass breakups. He's given up 122 yards receiving. 41 of those came on one play against Green Bay when he lost his footing. Just an unfortunate play. But he has been lights out. No touchdowns given up during that span. 70.3 passer rating. Sidney Jones has an 80.7 passer rating. The only reason it's higher than Reed, he gave up a touchdown in the Cardinals game. But otherwise, he's been lights out. He's got 2 pass breakups. He had a game with double-digit tackles. He has no missed tackles during that span. And that was a big issue for him early in his career and in college. He has been outstanding. He's played physical against the run. He had that big hit on that goal line stand on second down to come up and stick the running back. And then he had the big pass breakup the following play in the end zone. So I think Sidney Jones is easily playing the best football that he's played since coming to the NFL. Really seems to be coming into his own. His completion rate against him is 50%, and he's given up 44 yards and 6.3 yards per reception since week 6. 1 touchdown, and he should have an interception. I still think that he should have had a pick in that Cardinals game that they took away from him. So both these guys continue to play lights out in the secondary, and that has been a big reason why this defense has been so much better the last 5 or 6 games, because they were getting good play from Trey Brown, and it stinks he got hurt, but Sidney Jones has stepped right into the lineup and playing his best football. DJ Reed is playing outstanding football since he got moved back to his natural position on the right side where he feels much more comfortable. So Seattle might have 2 long-term answers at corner. Both of them are going to be free agents after this year, but the way they're playing, you got to find a way to re-sign these guys and bring them back for 2022, because that has been one of the biggest bright spots for this football team. We're going to shift our focus now to week 14, moving away from the 49ers game. It's great. We've celebrated the win, but just like the team, it's time for us to turn the page. We're going to talk Houston Texans here in a moment. In life, we're all bound for different things. With beachbound.com vacations, you can be bound for adventure, bound for passion, bound for discovery, or bound for togetherness, bound for immersion, bound for rejuvenation, or may you be bound for encountering the unexpected. Personally, when I'm in a beach resort, I'm bound to end up at a poolside bar. Even though I don't drink, I'll have a really big taco flight. It's delicious. As long as I've got a good view and I've got good food, I'll be happy as I can be. Visit beachbound.com and you can visit the perfect beach vacation for you, no matter what you are looking for. What are you bound for? Visit beachbound.com today. All right, Rob, let's shift our focus. Houston Texans, road game. In the past, this might have been a really exciting matchup because when Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson went against each other in Watson's rookie season, it was a shootout, back and forth affair. But you and I both know a lot has changed since 2017 when Watson first came in the league. And most notably, Deshaun Watson has not taken a single snap for the Houston Texans this year. They've had Tyrod Taylor and Davis Mills taking the snaps under center. That's the biggest reason, among many others, that they are 2-10 and tied for last place in the AFC South. That tells you how bad the division is. The Jaguars are actually technically in last place because they lost to Houston earlier this year. But it has been a really rough first season for new head coach David Culley, who really inherited a no-win situation given Deshaun Watson's legal issues and the fact he was demanding a trade.
Yeah, the Houston Texans are a pretty bad football team, Corbin. They rank dead last in all of the NFL in points scored. They're 30th in points allowed. As you mentioned, they are technically not in last place, but I think that you just have to remember how well that the Seahawks played against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And at least my personal evaluation of the Houston Texans roster compared to Jacksonville's, I think Houston is the lesser talented team. Now, that doesn't mean that's going to be a victory for the Seahawks. Of course, the Seattle had the advantage of playing Jacksonville at home, and they have to go on the road against Houston. It's going to be interesting to see who is going to be playing at the quarterback position, if it's going to be the rookie Davis Mills, or if the Texans go back to Tyrod Taylor, who was benched last week, but at the same time is a dual threat quarterback. He does have the running ability, the deep.
He's dealing with a wrist injury too, I believe.
Yeah, he is. But I do think that you might see Tyrod Taylor back, at least healthy enough to play in this football game. So it's going to be interesting to see. But at the same time, if you look at the numbers, then it's easy to see why the Houston Texans have struggled as much as they have. And so to me, that would be one of the very first numbers that I would mention is that in 12 games, this team has 6 rushing touchdowns. And so when a team is as one-dimensional as that, then that's going to be really hard for Houston to be able to play and put up points against a Seahawks team that's playing as well as they are right now.
Yeah, before we really dive into the numbers here, I think that the best way to show why things have gone south for the Houston Texans is just looking at the roster turnover that they've had. And Deshaun Watson, there's no question that's the biggest loss for them. Even though he's still on the roster, he's been inactive every single game. He was never going to play after trying to force his way out of town. And then we know all the legal entanglements that he's dealing with right now that are far from being resolved, and there hasn't been a settlement. So that has killed them. Not having a top 5 caliber quarterback available immediately sinks the ship. And Davis Mills has shown some flashes. Tyrod Taylor is a veteran that can occasionally win a game for you, but those two are not Deshaun Watson. They're not even close. But you just look at the rest of their offseason, Rob, as far as big additions. I mean, David Culley's the new head coach. Like I said, he inherits this mess, and there's no question that there's really no other word to describe the Houston Texans. You got a new GM in place. They had a really messy situation with Bill O'Brien leaving as coach and general manager. He left a roster that had a ton of holes. He traded DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson, which I still think was the dumbest trade in NFL history. Made no sense to me at all. But you look at the additions they had. I mean, Tyrod Taylor is maybe the most notable one that they had the entire offseason, and that was just because, oh, crap, we're not going to have Deshaun Watson. We need a quarterback that has started games. But, I mean, Christian Kirksey, Jordan Jenkins, cornerback Desmond King, all decent role guys, but those are the biggest names they added. And you look at the departures, J.J. Watt gone, going to the Arizona Cardinals. They lost Will Fuller, a really dynamic receiver, going to the Miami Dolphins. He's had injuries this year, like he's had a number of years in his career, but still a very good player. Had a big part of their offense the last few years, so that's a big key guy to lose. Nick Martin, the guy that started a lot of games in the offensive line. We know how bad their offensive line is. Whitney Merciless got released middle of the season. And still a quality player. Green Bay has sure welcomed him with open arms. Mark Ingram, the only running game that they had to speak of, gets traded to the Saints. So this is a team that is just dearth of talent across the board. So when you look at the numbers, there's really no mystery why this football team has been so bad this year.
No, that there's not. And one of the players that may, like Tyrod Taylor I mentioned before, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he is able to come back against his football team. But one of the other player that might be able to return would be the left tackle Laramie Tunsil. And I mentioned him because for all of the people out there who have been critical of the Seahawks for giving up the 2 first-round picks for the safety Jamal Adams, and obviously with Adams now struggling with the shoulder injury of his, a shoulder injury, then the Houston Texans made a similar splashy move. They traded a couple of first-round picks for the left tackle Laramie Tunsil. He went down with a thumb injury, was expected to be 4 weeks. This would be the 8th game he would miss if he is unable to suit up against Seattle. So one of the reasons why the quarterback play has been as poor as it has in Houston is because they just have not been able to protect the quarterback, whoever that might be. Laramie Tunsil's subtraction from this team has been absolutely huge. And so to me, that's going to be one of the interesting things here. I mentioned before the fact that the Houston Texans in 12 games only have 6 rushing touchdowns. They've only got 13 passing touchdowns, so it's not like this is a very explosive offense. The one guy who is a little bit frightening is a receiver that Seattle is very well aware of in Brandon Cooks, having, previously with the Los Angeles Rams. But at the same time, this is just not a team that is very explosive. In fact, in half of their games so far this season, Corbin, they have scored single-digit points, 6 games of 9 points or less in an NFL season. I mean, that says it all right there.
Yeah, that was the most damning stat when we were looking at this football team. And again, you don't take anybody in the NFL lightly. The Minnesota Vikings learned that lesson this weekend, losing to the winless Detroit Lions. Any team can win on any given Sunday. And this is a Texan team that has played several good teams tough. They had the New England Patriots on the ropes earlier this year with Davis Mills under center. So they're a team that any given week can play well enough to compete, just like we see in the entire NFL. But you look at the stats, and most of their games, they've had a number of games they've just gotten absolutely shellacked. So Seattle should be the major favorite going into this game. And you mentioned some of those stats. That one about the number of games they've been in single digits, to me, like I said, is most damning. 6 games, 9 or less points scored. That's unbelievable in the NFL. 3.5 interceptions per 100 attempts. That's 28th in the league. So it hasn't mattered who's under center. Both their quarterbacks have been prone to throwing interceptions. Poor pass protection and lack of receiving targets away from Brandon Cooks has played a role in a lot of that. And you look at the defense. The defense isn't much better. They're giving up 144.2 rushing yards per game, easily the most in the NFL. So Seattle got a little bit going with their ground game this weekend against the 49ers, who are a much more formidable defense, even without Fred Warner. That is a much more formidable front line to run the football against. So you should think that the Seahawks will be able to move the ball against Houston's front. And this is maybe the most interesting stat when you're looking at Houston. But everything we've said at this point has been bad, but they are having an interception on 3.6% of every 100 pass attempts, which is 4th in the NFL. So they do create turnovers and they do get sacks. They're in the middle of the pack for pass rush. So those are the 2 things to watch out for if you're the Seattle Seahawks. Jonathan Greenard, their leader, with 8 sacks. They've got a player by the name of Jacob Martin that Seahawk fans may remember. He was traded for Jadeveon Clowney, and he's got 4 sacks. They've got some guys that can get after the quarterback, and they know how to create turnovers, 18 of them total this year. That is offset to an extent, though, how bad they've been against the run and giving up explosive pass plays.
It absolutely is. And I think that's one of the reasons why they have as many sacks and interceptions as they do, is that teams have tried to be very aggressive early on in games and try to get up. Get ahead of the Houston Texans early on, and then force either Tyrod Taylor or Davis Mills III to be able to try to build the Houston Texans back. And the fact that they're 2-10 so far this season, obviously it speaks to the lack of success that Houston has had in being able to claw their way back into football games. That's one of the reasons why, again, that they are dead last in run defense, is because once teams are able to get that lead, then they basically just pound Houston into submission. So to me, that's going to be the recipe for that Seattle is going to try to take. And I look forward to kind of breaking down that approach on Wednesday's show in our matchup and all of our matchups.
Yeah, if you're listening to this show, we hope you're going to be listening in to our Matchup Wednesday episode coming up tomorrow. And these ones are always interesting because it's not like the Seahawks and Texans play a lot. They play every 4 years. And considering Houston is long, long way from being in Super Bowl contention, it's going to be a while till these two teams tangle again. So it's going to be fun looking at some players that we normally don't get to cover that are well outside of the NFC West. And so, again, if you listen today, you listen to yesterday's episode. If you're a regular listener, if you're a first-time listener, if you're all the above, you need to make sure to listen in to Matchup Wednesday. It's our favorite episode of the week, and we can't wait to break down all the intriguing matchups when the Seahawks travel to Houston to face the Texans. Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen every day. Make sure to listen to Locked On Bets as your second listen. It's your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets is hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. You can follow me on Twitter at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to check out Locked On Seahawks on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and the all-new Odyssey app. That's AUDACY. As I mentioned a moment ago, you won't want to miss it tomorrow. It's Matchup Wednesday. We'll be breaking down 6 matchups between the Seahawks and the Texans in Week 14. You won't want to miss it. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thanks for listening in. Go Hawks.